Hello, and welcome to tonight's 63rd Pearl of Wisdom. It's hard to believe we've accomplished so much and in such a little amount of time here, just a little over a year. We are a little over halfway through our Pearl of Wisdoms. There are 108 in total, and we are on our 63rd Pearl of Wisdom tonight with MynooMaryel. And she will be sharing with us 7 types of relating in any family dynamic. So this Pearl of Wisdom we can all relate to. It's all about family. So I'm so grateful that you've all decided to join us tonight, and this will be quite a doozy. I know it's, again, something that we all have experienced, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly. So she will guide us on how to work with these family dynamics and understand how to co-create really a family with exquisite, enchanting, and enriching relationships, which we all desire, that will continue to regenerate themselves. So I don't know about you, but I've always imagined the perfect family. Well, what is that? Well, I guess it's what you make of it. So I'm excited to hear from Mynoo tonight and really just deepen in my understanding of how we can work with these family dynamics. We will have our family joining us here on Zoom and our big family here on Facebook Live. I know a lot of you rewatch this on Facebook Live. I know I rewatch it on Facebook Live because there's so much information that Mynoo shares. If you don't have a pen and paper handy, grab one. You can always rewind and rewatch. So thank you all for joining. And for those of you who have just joined, again, tonight is our 63rd Pearl of Wisdom, which is family. And we will talk about 7 types of relating in any family dynamic. So thank you again for joining, for making time in your busy schedule to be with us. And we are here with MynooMaryel. Mynoo, thank you for bringing forth this beautiful 63rd Pearl of Wisdom family.
Thank you, Catherine. There's International Family Day coming up, actually, after Mother's Day. So I can see why this is being brought forth as a Pearl of Wisdom today. So we are prepared for that when it arrives. So I'm looking forward to sharing with all of you. So let's begin. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. And I'm especially excited to hear the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, all of it, so we can find our way.
Indeed. Okay. So first of all, let's begin by looking at family by itself, I had a significant re-education around family once I embarked on my spiritual awakenings. This is in 2010. Until that point in time, there were friends and there was family, which was, I would say, blood family equivalent. People that you related to, people that you sometimes endured, people that you didn't have a choice about. It was that sort of understanding, and friends, you could choose who your friends were. And then I embark on my spiritual awakenings, and off I go to Bali. And there I am in Bali, and I'm like going through a very different kind of a life from the corporate executive that members of my blood family looked up to someone who's shaved her head and walking around in flowing clothes and flowers in her ear and stuff. My blood family couldn't understand, what was making me so happy. I mean, I remember my niece saying, "Do not post a photo on Facebook. We can't take it. You without your hair," that sort of stuff. Now, on the other hand, so that was like my blood family who weren't even, they weren't even close to me in proximity, but we were close, who couldn't quite figure out what was going on with me. And therefore, there was fear in them. It wasn't that they were rejecting me, they were just afraid because they knew how I dealt with in the corporate world, but this kind of a world, which was so alien to me, they had their concerns. And on the other hand, in Bali, I felt so received, so accepted. I felt there was no pressure on me to do anything by any particular time. It was like, whatever I said was my choice for me. And there was great respect, and I respected them. And, there was a party that was being held and I didn't want to go to it. I could just freely say I didn't want to, and it was okay. There was no obligation or anything like that. And I thought, well, that also is my family. So I got my head around the concept of a soul family. And so there was the blood family and the soul family. My series of spiritual awakenings continued. And then it was time for me to return into the business world. And then I thought, actually, those of us who are working on this particular project and that are bringing forth this particular project, we also are a family of sorts, So that's like the project family. Then it was like the work family. And I realized that, okay, there is something about family itself. And you know how I talk about every word has an innate vibration. I realized then that there is something about family that transcends blood family. So, and here we are. I mean, we've been together in doing these events, which Catherine has been hosting, and we feel like a family. Beyond meditation, we feel like a family. Everyone who's done the journey to miracles, we feel like a family. So there's something there, So I was excited to uncover these 7 ways of relating that we have access to as a family. And when you observe these forms of relating, that is when you establish that, okay, this person is a part of my family. So use this form of relating. And where you have your blood family, or you have members who have been a part of your family that you haven't necessarily related to as such, bring in these forms of relating, and it transforms the dynamic. And that's how you work with this pearl of wisdom. Can you imagine? I mean, each pearl, it's called a pearl of wisdom because each pearl is such that it can actually enable you to create a world that works for everyone. So this pearl of wisdom family, whose innate vibration is one of connectedness, gives you that gift of always feeling you are connected, always feeling you belong. It's foundational for us to experience the world as a world that we are able to work for ourselves and see it work for everyone. So let's look at the first form of relating. There is a familiarity in a family. It's like there are some ties that we have with each other. There's a relaxed friendliness. And there's like sort of like an automatic feeling of intimate connection that occurs. And that's what I noticed when I expanded my family worldview and went from, blood family that I was born into to accepting the soul family, to then expanding it to project family. In Bali, there were some people that I'd never ever met in my life before. And yet that familiarity was there. And we all have this experience, where you may meet someone or you're in a party and you're talking to someone and you just feel that connection. So when you have that familiarity, that automatic sense of friendliness and an intimate connection, you know that, okay, this connection is the connectedness of family. You don't have to become overwhelming or overly demanding or needy or anything like that. It's just useful to notice. Now, when I started noticing this, I realized that, we all make soul agreements. And hence, sometimes you experience this familiarity with certain people and with others you don't. It gave me a sense of understanding that we are never alone. It took away that fear of loneliness. When I started connecting with this form of relating. Initially, when I had that experience where my family wasn't able to understand what was happening with me, there was a little bit of an undertone of fear that, there isn't a go-to place, go-to safe house for me if my family itself is not understanding what's going on with me. It disappeared very, very soon when I started engaging with this form of relating. Now, when you feel that relaxed friendliness, the have to disappears, You don't feel you have to do anything. You can just simply be. You feel received, you feel seen, you feel accepted. Now, here's how to work with something like this. When you feel that with someone or with a group of people, whether they step forward and receive you, you don't have to wait for that. You can actually step forward and allow them to show up in a relaxed way, in the way they wish to relate to you. Just giving them the freedom, and that gives you the freedom. And this familiarity relating starts to transform the dynamic between you and starts to transform the dynamic in the environment itself. The second form of relating that becomes available to us in a family is, I call it anchored alignment. So, anchored is really making something or someone just, take a position, take a position, and literally fastening something so that it is firmly secure. So there's something that occurs in a family which anchors you, and you develop that sense of security. And alignment really is all about, having things adjust, recalibrate so that they actually come together in relationship to each other and feel secure and stationed. So anchored alignment opens up a very beautiful sense of grounding that you experience. An alignment doesn't necessarily mean you get stuck to one another, but you can align, to each other. So with this particular one, the anchored alignment, for me, when I got this, it felt a little bit complicated at the time. So I did my, my favorite lay of the land, really looked at, okay, um, here's the blood family, here's the soul family, just took one or two members there. Here's my project family, took a few members, and I haven't done this with Beyond Meditation family because by this time I'm like really into the zone of family. But at that time when I was learning about this, I took few people in each one and looked at this piece about anchored alignment. What is it that gets anchored in my blood family? What is it that gets anchored in my soul family? What is it that gets anchored in my project family? And where is the alignment? And is there an alignment between these three different groups that I'm now holding under the umbrella of family? And by this time, I'd already experienced a few spiritual awakenings. I still like to do this kind of very mental analysis, because in my world, as you've heard me say many times, take your mind along. Always take your mind along. So by doing this, once I see the entire picture, it really is my thoughts have processed this. The mind has envisioned it. I'm already anchored in the now. So it has actually been lodged in my field. And so it is. And I can keep moving forward. I don't then have to categorize anything anymore. But it required me, for my own sake, to do this level of in-depth analysis to begin with. Because for me, up to that point in time, when I was in my corporate life, family was sacrosanct. Work was just separate and also sacrosanct in its own way. And I created boundaries and I held myself to those boundaries and made myself feel super guilty at times for encroaching those boundaries and allowing, things to get all muddled up from time to time. But once I did this, I realized that actually each one has got a distinct quality to it. And it really does provide an anchoring for me from which I can expand and flow. So my invitation to you would be to do this. Now, when I was doing the anchored alignment, and first I took a few people in each of those categories in which I would say I had that familiarity. And then I went deeper and I said, okay, let me see if I just took physical, is there something in each of these categories that I get anchored, that gets anchored within me? Is there an alignment that each of these individuals in these different categories of family that I call gets aligned in terms of the physical state that I'm in? And I did that in the mental state, and not all of them had things that I wrote in there, but it was a very thorough analysis. And whilst it may seem like, oh my God, such a lot of work, it actually isn't. And the only reason I ask you in the Pearls of Wisdom to do this level of analysis is it takes your mind along. Remember, the mind is about survival. It will interfere. It has veto. It will bypass anything. But when you take your mind along, it does not feel it needs to use bull force. It knows that you've seen it and you're honoring it. And you know what that does? It has you honor your own worthiness. Mind is a very big part of you, and it can interfere with your own recognition of your own worthiness. And what's more, doing the anchored alignment analysis not only honors your own worthiness, it honors all the different types of relationships that are meaningful. to you at that point in time. And you develop a practice of honoring that worthiness in others. And what that does is it enables you to reclaim what I call as dignity. And dignity is something you are born with. Not only that, you're doing this as a matter of conscious choice with conscious awareness. And it is this, the first two forms of relating. When I got to the end of the second one, loneliness disappeared. I remember my mom saying to me, you know, everyone's talking about stress these days, that stress is the new disease, but actually loneliness is the plague that is developing very fast. And you go address that. And I thought, yeah, I guess. And this piece, this pearl of wisdom, absolutely addressed that. Because there's a knowingness that comes in. I mean, of the people that I had in my list, blood family, soul family, project family, you know, the miracle family, I had these 4 categories. Out of that, I only had 20% of people in there who I was born with, you know. The rest were people that actually had become a part of my family as I continued to live my life. Well, how did that happen? You know, these soul agreements were there, and I chose to recognize these souls, and they chose to recognize me. So if it's available to me, it's available to you. It's just a matter of noticing that familiarity and then moving forward from there and anchoring the alignment that exists. I mean, I have great fun doing this now when I meet total strangers who actually have never physically met. You know, I've only ever met them online. And all of these quite intimate qualities of family exist there. And it's so joyful for me to see there are many of you who only met each other on my sessions here, right? The Pearls of Wisdom Beyond Meditation. You have a connection with each other. You've never met each other. You're in completely different parts of the world, different cultures, different accents, you know? So loneliness is like it's a meaning word now. Because you're never alone. All you have to do is you care to look. And when you go start anchoring that familiarity, you immediately recognize each other as family. The third form of relating is, again, you know, I don't edit these words when they come through as headlines, and this is called master strokes. And it's, you know, a master stroke. What is a master stroke? You know, an action that is very clever and produces success. So family actually, you know, equips you to co-create collaboratively some clever actions and choices that deliver success, or however you wish to define success. They provide you with, you know, quite an intimate, friendly set of potential collaborators and co-creators. And you already experience that feeling of coexistence. And with those ingredients available to you, it's up to you. You can create masterstrokes. Knowing this was interesting. So, you know, once I got that, oh, masterstrokes, I wanted to anchor that in reality, in terms of real examples of masterstrokes that actually occurred as a result of me recognizing certain people, certain groups as family. You know, just looking at our Beyond Meditation family or the Miracle Journeyers family, you know, there are amazing projects that have been birthed, which are masterstrokes. You know, the Saffron community with Elaine and Catherine that you're all a part of. It's like a masterstroke delivery that occurred with a group of people that weren't necessarily blood family, but chose to come together in that way. So here I would say, you know, take on just doing like a stock take. This is not even the lay of the land. This is like just take stock. So what I did here was I looked at, okay, what are the different aspects of my life that I live? You know, me as a mother, me as a teacher, me as, you know, a businesswoman, me as a spiritual guide. And I looked at, well, what would I call as master strokes in these different areas? You know, clever actions that produce success. And who were the parties involved in that? Who were my collaborators? Remember how I like to separate collaborators and co-creators? You know? And it was amazing, amazing and amazing and abundant, all of it together to realize how rich my life is. And I now do this as a matter of routine with people, especially when they're feeling, you know, not that great about themselves or feeling really taken for granted by certain members of their family or whatever, wherever they may be at. I get them to really engage with the master strokes that have taken place in their life. Clever actions that produce success. Who was involved in that? There are many times and where people go into, to really make this happen, I have to only depend on myself and I'm totally and utterly exhausted. And I can sit there sympathizing with them or you know, wanting them to think differently and get exhausted myself. And I choose not to do that. I just really receive them. So I hear what you say. So let's look at, just pick one or two things in your life that you would say is a masterstroke. You know, it's clever action that produces success. Anybody and everybody can find at least one thing, however difficult a situation that they may be in. And then you start unpacking it from there. And really what you're looking to do is have them recognize what actually occurred, what did they do, and what were these clever actions that had to occur for the success to be produced. Then people start to see, okay, I wasn't the only one. I did my part. But if this hadn't occurred and that hadn't occurred, or that person 2 months ago hadn't brought this to my attention, I wouldn't even have gone there. They start to realize actually every masterstroke, and everyone has a masterstroke, at least one. Every masterstroke is a collaborative co-creation, always. And then you recognize actually, people care. I do belong and I am a part of this earth family and all the living beings in it. With things like this, you know, Catherine, you were mentioning about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful. We see it a lot and we talk about it a lot in the context of family, you know, and it's great to acknowledge all of that and yet do these forms of relating analysis, and you realize, first of all, that there is actually no difference between blood family and soul family, really no difference. It is. They are the same. When you choose to notice, and there'll be some in your blood family who you might never have related to at all. And yet there'll be members in your soul family who will be even more intimate than your siblings in terms of making some things come about. Master strokes is, again, it's one of those evidence giving forms of relating. To me, what it did when I did this master stroke analysis, this one, the way I looked at it, and you can choose whichever way you wish, but what I did was I literally went the last decade and the decade before that, because I knew that these 2 decades were like really big ones for me. And I picked up, which were what I would call as master strokes in these last 2 decades. And then went from there. The fourth form of relating that transforms your family dynamic, transforms the dynamic of any relationships, is inviting ingenious. Ingenious basically means having or showing an unusual aptitude for discovering, inventing, contriving, something that's marked by its originality, resourcefulness, cleverness. It could be in a conception or execution, So it's literally like people who come up with these clever ideas or solutions. A family, literally, it's like whether they do it consciously or not, just by the virtue of you acknowledging that I am with my family, you're inviting ingenious. So when we have the Beyond Meditation family, just by you coming into that and recognizing it as a family, you're inviting ingenious. And what does that do? It literally opens the doorway to that aptitude of discovering, inventing, marked by originality, coming up with clever ideas and solutions. And a very wonderful form of collaborative co-creation can emerge from that. Once you understand that the moment you use the phrase family, that connectedness that occurs where loneliness disappears, and there's a knowingness that sets in, that you are never alone, inviting ingenious becomes your reality. And you can apply the ingeniousness anywhere. You don't have to necessarily do it with a family member. Just by knowing that you're not alone, the loneliness disappearing, you know that there is someone who's got your back, you can go forth and multiply, inviting ingenious within yourself. And when you do that, whoever you're collaboratively co-creating with, they step into this as well. And remember, as a human, we can be in a state of creation, that's the natural state, or we can be in a state of consumption. Consumption produces instant gratification. Creation provides long-term fulfillment. So even when you are in consumption, because consumption very soon starts consuming you, you can literally reach out to one of your family members, say, help. It starts to invite ingenious. It breaks the pattern. And you can get into that innovative creativity, finding solutions for whatever it is that you may be stopped by. And I would say that has been the key, for all my life. Since I was 15, I'd been in A relationships. I never ever thought that I would ever go out and be on my own, because, it needed another person for me to know that I wasn't alone. until I became aware of this larger construct of family and anchored it in so many different ways that it was totally the reality that I was living in. I had my freedom, I had my choice, and I could be unleashed and unstoppable and still know that I have this amazing family that's got my back. And I could be creative, I could be innovative, I could be inventive. And this gave rise for me to this whole idea of resolutions, solutions coming from resolve. And with courage, actually going forward and implementing them. I recognize within myself and in other members of my family this unusual aptitude for discovering and inventing, co-creating solutions. And hence, whatever occurred, it was an opportunity, a playground for this ingenious inventions to be brought about. And that really brought in that vibration of allowing, and that fear of being attached to what you know how to do started to disappear and literally disintegrate. And in the work that I did with people, and I did so much of it online in the last couple of years, it had an impact on others too. And all of that was necessary for us to go through this crazy period that we all went through in 2020. Really brought out that unusual aptitude of discovering and inventing new ways of being. The fifth form of relating in a family is loyalty and likability. And, in addition to that friendliness and that feeling of intimate connection that occurs, when you engage with this form of relating, there are strong feelings of support and allegiance. There's an agreeability and friendliness, and it seems to be easy to be fond of this person or these people. Now, this was an interesting one, because in my corporate life, I was very opinionated. Everything was black or white. That was it. There were no grays in that world. And then I go through my spiritual awakenings, and the world is not just gray, it's supremely colorful, with all shades and every color you can think of. So it's like, it was great for me, but not necessarily great for others. But when I took this on, I really applied it with every member of my blood family. I knew that as cousins, when we were growing up, we would meet, when we were growing up. And then we all went up different ways, and we just didn't really connect very much with each other until I took on this particular form of relating, and really looked at what was agreeable, what was friendly about this cousin or that cousin, and that sort of stuff. Like just did it for the heck of it. I had time in Bali, and I would create, the way I managed my time is I would create segments. So there was a family segment for about a year and a half. Every day there would be sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes half an hour family segment. And I would just so there was a stretch of time where I literally just focused on my blood family and took every uncle, aunt, cousins there. And this particular one, loyalty and likability, was what I was looking at. And it was amazing. I mean, the stuff that I could totally took for granted, I realized how important some of those aspects were in forming the personality that had given me the freedom to be where I was at that time. In certain people, I saw qualities in them just because I chose to take the time and not just stare and enjoy nature, but actually stare and enjoy and experience these relationships that I had had to at a surface level or at a deeper level at some point in my life with people that I had been born to. I hadn't chosen to be with them consciously. At a soul level, of course, we choose everything. And it really did, including this is where the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful pieces came out. But even the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, all of those together have contributed to make me the way I am. Some things have given me discernment. Some things have made it clear what I do want for myself, what I don't want. And it was such an amazing honoring of the choice my soul made to be born into this blood family. And anytime you engage with anything like this, where there is this deep honoring of someone else, you are always applying it to yourself as well. So that intense loyalty and likability of my own being got anchored. This was foundational to the body of work that many of you have experienced with me, which is becoming truly, madly, deeply in love with yourself. By discarding members of our family or certain nuances or experiences within our family, you do discard big parts of you. I'm not saying you put blinkers on and some things that are not acceptable, you still like them just because you should be positive. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in your acknowledgement, there is honoring of you. It did generate strong feelings, right? This is not it wasn't a breeze in the park. Some aspects of this did generate very strong feelings. For me, that was a shock that I could even feel so strongly because I had done so much to really block my feelings up at that point in time. And it was a necessary part of my own evolution to connect to my feelings in that way and experience them and not run away from them. So loyalty and likability, whilst it feels very soft and yummy, the end result is that. But the process of really anchoring this can generate strong feelings. And again, with the Pearls of Wisdom, I always say do it in sequence. So by the time you get to here, you've already gone through the ingeniousness within you and your family members. You've already anchored the knowing of master strokes that you have collaboratively co-created, and you already have anchored alignment and you understand the familiarity that is there. So you can experience the fullness of the feelings that rise when you're looking at loyalty and likability, form of relating within different family members. You do it with your blood family, everything else is a breeze in the park. The sixth one is, I think it's a strange word and quite a grand one too. It's called Yokozuna. Yokozuna is actually a sumo wrestler, right? But it's a grand champion, basically. A grand champion sumo wrestler is a yokozuna. So this form of relating, the yokozuna form of relating in a family where you honor you and each other as a grand champion. And sometimes you wrestle with choices that you are to make. Sometimes it's wrestling even within your own family, right? But when you recognize you are a grand champion and the other one is also has got the grand champion qualities, it becomes a fabulous game of aliveness that you play with your family. I mean, this was so interesting when I engaged with that. First, it was like, this is weird, but then I realized, actually, yeah, it's true. This planet is a playground of relationships. And how do you start relating? You're given the ingredient of your state of life where you're breathing, and then you go into the arena and you start relating. Initially, it can feel like you're wrestling. But really, what's the intention of this game of life? It is to come alive. And we are all grand champions at that in our own way. And when you adopt a grand champion attitude, it creates an aura of dignity. And that aura of dignity is you immediately start honoring your own worthiness and you honor that in others. And it brings that strength, that resilience, that centeredness, and sharpens your skill of noticing the magnificence in each other and going past the fractured human disguises. This was pretty powerful once I got that. I then said, okay, wow, we're all grand champions, hence the master strokes, hence the ingenious creativity that occurs. And it doesn't matter if certain members of your family don't want to have anything to do with you for a period of time. And so it is. They're still living their life. They're still coming alive in their own way. As a grand champion, you don't waste your time, berating each other. You get on and keep perfecting your game. Knowing that when you are in the arena, you're just going to give it your best and do it with that grand champion attitude of inner strength, with that aura of dignity. And that is the skill with which you will choose to live your life and come alive. I just really love the yokozuna. What a fabulous attitude. And it's one of the forms of relating. Can you imagine relating to every member of your family as a grand champion? And the moment you do that, you have that aura of dignity where you are honoring your own worthiness. They land in an aura of dignity themselves. They feel strong and they feel skillful, and you feel strong and you feel skillful. There's a stillness that occurs. Literally, I mean, it was amazing. I mean, I have a couple of cousins who are supremely opinionated, and they are fearless in voicing their opinions and will not budge. It became a fun game as opposed to a battleground. And they also eased off, we just laughed about their opinions. And we even made that into a game sometimes. So one of them is very, very political. Another one has got some very strong views about the environment. and how we are trashing it as humans. And I have this thing about enough of human bashing, let's have human rejoicing. And it became a Yokozuna arena of grand champions. We're all in this aura of dignity, having a laugh and coming alive. At one point, it would be people would go in and out of groups, family groups that we'd created. Oh, enough of that. And now we are all in it. It just takes one or two people to step in the grand champion mode, and everybody else rises. The seventh form of relating, this is a very sweet one, which is simple serendipities. When you're relating as a family, or choosing to apply that label of family to someone or a group of people, you start to notice those simple serendipities that start to occur. I remember the place that Catherine and I met and engaged a little bit with each other the first time was I was on my way to ecstatic dancing, and Catherine and her sister joined me, in Bali, and off we went. And I remember one of the guys who was the DJ who was orchestrating it at that time. And I felt that beautiful connection with him. It would be like I would think, oh, I wish he plays this. And if he did this, this would go so well with this number. And it would go so well with that. And it was as if he was just doing it exactly as I was thinking it. And simple serendipities. And when you actually engage with this one, and you do the lay of the land, I mean, it's wonderful. You just choose anybody, whether it's the good aspect of your family or the bad one, and you start doing, okay, let's take do a stock take of these simple serendipities that might have occurred. You'll always find one or two. And then with some, you'll find so many that have emerged. And you get so close to rejoicing in how rich life is. And the more serendipitous experiences we have, aren't they surprising? Don't they surprise you in a happy sort of way? It sort of brings in a bit of magic and wonderment. And can you imagine applying that within your family? Blood family or otherwise. But really, it's a collection of occurrences, developments of events as they layer upon each other. By chance occurrences that make you happy, or are beneficial in some way. This took a little bit of deeper work with certain relationships that I had formed an opinion about in terms of how stressful they were. When I did this body of work, I realized so many things that had occurred at the time have given me a deeper understanding of, taking the diagonal route to what my intended goal is. And has prevented me from going on drunken walks, deviating from what I'm here to really cause and make happen. The strictness of how my dad brought us up, and some of his opinions and disciplining methods, certainly helped me avoid certain ways that saved me time and brought me faster to the end result of what I wanted to achieve. So you really get to see, nobody comes into your life or takes up any of your time if they're not family. And when someone is family, they come with that innate vibration of connectedness. And using these 7 forms of relating, you can enrich yourself with the juiciness and the yumminess hidden in the connectedness that you already had available to you. Starting with, the familiarity, anchoring the alignment, analyzing the master strokes, clever actions that you collaboratively created that produce success, in opening the doorway to inviting that ingenious within you and within others that you relate to. Knowing that within your family, your immediate family, extended family, whether you've met them or you haven't met them, it doesn't matter. You get to see the loyalty and the likability that exists within you and within others towards you. And you land in the Yokozuna vibe of the grand champion, with an aura of dignity and strength and skill that you freely, generously share. Playing that game of aliveness, counting your simple serendipities. So enjoy as we begin, building up to International Family Day. It's quite exquisite. Over to you, Catherine.
Well, Mynoo, before we started, you mentioned that this one would hit the bullseye. The 63rd Pearl of Wisdom family would hit the bullseye, and you did not disappoint. Thank you so much. I know it left many things to ponder, but it answered so many questions. So I think each of us will be going back to the Facebook Live and rewatching it and figuring out how we can get to where we need to go. I know I'm excited to do the exercise to honor the master strokes. That was so brilliant. And how I've been
It was a master stroke.
It was a master stroke. So this has just left me with so much joy in my heart. And I think all of us are going to have such fun with this one. I think we're going to need this is the 101, and I think we're going to need the next version. So excited. Thank you for giving so many great examples. It's been really helpful. And thank you all for joining. I hope you found it as exciting and wonderful as I did. And can't wait to hear what's next. We'll be here next Thursday for our 64th Pearl of Wisdom. And thank you again, Mynoo, for surprising and delighting us.
You're so welcome. Thank you all, my family here.